So, following the direct, there's been a lot of coping and seething from the general Nintendo community. A lot of people are freaking out about Air Riders getting so much coverage, Fire Emblem getting announced, all these other smaller games. But ooh, Metroid has been neglected. We haven't gotten a real trailer or a real Nintendo Direct. Ooh, doom and gloom. Like there's a lot to say about this subject because I myself have been very, very critical of Metroid Prime 4. I was saying this game was going to be a disaster when they showed the first logo. So when they showed the logo with no actual game attached to it, I immediately called saw that as a red flag. And of course, nobody paid attention to me. Nobody listened to Harmon Smith, even after the first delay, even after all these problems that the game has had. Like everyone ignored Harmon Smith, even though I called it out to begin with. And now that the game is almost out, it seems as if Nintendo is sending it out to die, that they don't care about it, they don't have any faith in it. And I'm sure the story about what happened with this game is going to come to light eventually, but I do think it needs to be emphasized more going forward after this specific direct that Metroid is not a major Nintendo IP. Because back in the 90s, that was kind of the narrative that like Mario, Zelda, Metroid were like the three big, like huge Nintendo titles. And even back then, that wasn't true because Pokemon came out and immediately eclipsed Metroid in relevancy. But throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, we've heard this nonstop whining about how disrespected Metroid is and how Nintendo doesn't give it enough support and how there's all these like Metroid would be way bigger if Nintendo just did more with it. And like the reality is that Metroid is Fire Emblem is bigger than Metroid. Kirby is bigger than Metroid. Animal Crossing is bigger than Metroid. Pikmin is bigger than Metroid at this point. Metroid's all-time best-selling game, Metroid Dread, only sold like 3 million units. Prime, the second best-selling, was bundled in with GameCubes. The reality is, Metroid is not and never has been a heavy seller for Nintendo. It is a niche product that continues to be made because the developers are enthusiastic about it and because fans enjoy it. Like this is, in a lot of ways, the least successful Nintendo property there is. I would argue at this stage, Metroid is the least successful mainline Nintendo IP. Obviously, there's like some niche stuff like Chibi Robo that I've done worse, but like out of all like the major IPs that like people talk about and remember, like Metroid has this long history of just not being all that relevant. And that's really something we really need to acknowledge going into this holiday season because so many people I've seen going into this direct were primarily like hyping up Metroid Prime 4. They were talking about how it was going to be a system seller, how it was going to be the best game on the console. Keep in mind, we don't know anything about it yet. Like, they completely disrespected games like, say, Fire Emblem, like Kirby Air Riders, like Bonanza. Like there's so many other games that are coming out on Switch 2 that have just been completely ignored because certain people in the community only want to talk about Metroid. They only want to care about Metroid because that's the cool, mature Nintendo IP that's certain to make Nintendo a cool, mature company. Like, it just isn't going to happen. It's never happened. Metroid Prime was a million times the game Halo Combat Evolved was. It was so much better in every single way, shape, and form. Like, normies didn't care. Just like how normies haven't cared over the past 25 years, how Nintendo has stopped PlayStation into the ground with their superior IPs. Like nobody notices or cares about all of the things Nintendo is doing because they've kind of written them off to begin with. And this is a really good example. Like the Metroid phenomenon is just people who are self-conscious about being Nintendo fans trying to gaslight themselves into thinking like Metroid is like their gateway into be taken seriously as like mature adult gamers, and it just isn't going to happen. Like nobody cares about Metroid, nobody plays it, nobody respects it. Like it isn't that big of a deal, and I think Prime 4 is going to kind of cement that fact because this is a game that nobody likes the look of. that everyone has like wild issues with, that just seems like it's going to be a huge disappointment by Nintendo standards. I'm sure it's going to be way better than like whatever Halo or like COD or Bioshock ever put out. But like, by Nintendo standards, Metroid Prime 4 is going to be extraordinarily disappointing. And I have to wonder, like, if the community is even going to acknowledge that, because this is a really strange situation where you have a certain subset of the community that's like putting Metroid Prime 4 on a pedestal, saying it's going to be this huge console selling game, when in reality, when you look at like Metroid Prime 3, that only sold 1 million units. Metroid Prime 3 like trailed well behind like other major Nintendo titles that year. Like specifically, it came out like a couple of months before Super Mario Galaxy, like for comparison's sake. Prime 3 never hit that same level of quality. It was never as well received. It was never as popular. It didn't sell as well. Like Prime 3 was not as successful as Mario Galaxy. And I can assure you that there are several other games that came out in the early Wii years that far surpassed Metroid Prime 3 in relevancy, right? These are niche games for a specific demographic. They are not big mainstream major hits. And honestly, I fully expect Kirby Air Riders to far outstrip Metroid Prime 4 in sales. I'm gonna come out and say this right now, like, because I just got done watching some video from this from this gimp, like from Angry Vigilante Gamer, when he's not tied up in that in the Pulp Fiction basement. Like, this guy is trying desperately to gaslight you into thinking Mario Kart World is not a system seller, that the game is dead, and that Kirby Air Riders is not going to be a system seller for the Switch. Completely ignoring the fact that a lot of people own the console already. So people like this are sitting there with a completely straight face and trying to convince you that Metroid Prime 4 could be a system seller, that this is a huge deal, that this could be hugely successful, and it just isn't true. If you look at Metroid's history in the video game industry, it has never been a console seller. It has never been that relevant. It has been outstripped time and time again by Nintendo's newer IPs. And it is high time that we as a community finally start admitting it. That Pikmin is bigger, that Fire Emblem is bigger, that Pokemon is bigger. Like, how many times have we heard like 80s babies complain about Pokemon being so popular? To this day, I think that demographic still doesn't accept that Pokemon is the biggest brand in the world, and there are just endless examples of this, and I think Metroid Prime 4, like in the long term, it is going to be seen as a lesser game than Mario Kart World, than Donkey Kong Bonanza, than Kirby Air Riders, than Pokemon Legends ZA, than all the other games that are coming out on Switch 2 this year, right? Metroid Prime 4 is not doing anything to stick out from the crowd other than being a Metroid game. That is the only reason that anybody is talking about this game at all, is because it has the Metroid label slapped onto it. And that means it has to be good because it's a mature gamer for adult men. Like, that's kind of my mentality about this, is that people don't get excited about Metroid because they're genuine fans and they want to see the story continue, because if they were, they would have enjoyed Federation Force, which, by the way, Metroid Prime Federation Force probably is going to be better than Metroid Prime 4. Like, I've alluded to this on Twitter, and I'm saying it out right now. Like, I expect Metroid Prime Federation Force will be better than Metroid Prime 4. Like, if these guys were real serious Metroid fans, right, they would have been more involved in the series throughout the past several years. They would have been there for Dread. They would have been there for Samus Returns. They would have been there for Federation Force. They would have been there for Other M. Like, they would have been there for Prime 3, Prime 2. Like Fusion even, because I remember what it was like when these games came out, when everybody was just like hyping up Metroid as this huge deal, only for each of these games to just kind of underperform in some way. Like, people don't talk about this now, but when Prime was first shown off, the original Metroid Prime was first shown off, like, everybody thought it was going to be terrible. Why? because that's what people thought about Nintendo games at the time. They're all bad. We always talk about Wind Waker and Sunshine, but Prime also got hit with that pre-release. It wasn't until it came out and it started developing a fan base that people started being more defensive of it. It's a great game to be sure, but again, Metroid kind of is probably the quintessential example of what happens with these Nintendo games because they have all this hype going into them and then they come out and then people just get disappointed for petty reasons and then people play the game genuinely, experience the game in its entirety and then start enjoying it for what it is. It happened to me with Twilight Princess and stuff like that. And maybe Prime 4 will be the same way. But the idea that Prime 4 is going to be this huge major system seller is just ridiculous. And that is something that I do think we do need to address as fans. Metroid is not a very big video game IP for Nintendo. And it really needs to be thought of as such going forward.